93% of your life is spent indoors, but so many of our favorite moments are outdoors. The fresh air, the feeling of peace. Since warmer weather is almost here, let's make the most of it with Outer, the new outdoor furniture company with purposely designed furniture to get you outdoors more.
Outer makes the world's most beautiful, comfortable, innovative, and high-quality outdoor furniture, all from sustainable materials. I love the new outdoor dining table and chairs I just bought. It looks great in my backyard, and it's the perfect setup for hosting a dinner party. Go to liveouter.com/thefounderhour to see all the incredible products they have to offer.
For a limited time, get 10% off and free shipping. That's liveouter.com/thefounderhour. Terms and conditions apply. Hey everyone, before we get into the episode, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy what you hear, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That way you get notified when new episodes drop. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Founder Hour. Let's get into it. Our guest today is Sophia Amoruso. Sophia is a renowned entrepreneur, best-selling author, and an inspiration to many. She first gained recognition as the founder and CEO of Nasty Gal, an online retailer of trendy and vintage clothing, which started as a small eBay store and grew into a multi-million-dollar fashion empire. Her memoir, #Girlboss, became a New York Times bestseller, empowering entrepreneurs to fearlessly pursue their passions. She went on to build and sell Girlboss Media and currently runs Business Class, a digital course for entrepreneurs, while also investing in founders through her newest venture, Trust Fund. Please enjoy our conversation with Sophia Amoruso. So we always like to start from the very, very beginning of where our guests were born and what they were like as a kid. So I think I saw you were born in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
What was young, Sophia like?
Oh man, very misunderstood, and I think angsty from just a very young age. And I don't know if that's my parents' fault or if that's just kind of how I came out, but didn't really quite follow the rules. Yeah, you had to tell me a few times not to do something. And then
what's a really bad thing you did as a kid that you can remember? Or that you were told you did, maybe?
I guess in Montessori, I painted on the walls in the bathroom with my poop.
Oh, shit.
That's pretty bad. That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's either insanity, but today it's probably art.
I don't know. I guess I was creative and resourceful.
Yeah.
I
mean, if you were a famous artist and you just took a canvas and you used your own poop and it painted it or just slapped it on, it would sell for a few $1 million
If
today.
I became an artist later on, it would be an integral part of my story. I don't think it doesn't quite connect to what it is that I'm doing now, but we could make something up.
Every decade, how poop evolves.
Yeah, just what different bodily something that I decide to get creative with.
And you call the series "That's That Shit I Don't Like."
Yeah, I don't like.
Sounds pretty good to me.
I think poop is funny with someone. When someone says the word poop, I'm like,
yeah.
But I don't really like.
Chuckle.
I don't
If any artist
see poop
steals
and
this
laugh.
idea, by the way, you know where you heard it first.
It's just a matter of time. And the way we're headed, that's for sure going to happen.
Yeah, something's going to happen.
I was just checking out my microbiome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't eat tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. Nitrates.
So, okay. So what, I guess, ultimately, were you interested in though? What kind of things did you like to do or spend your time doing?
I mean, I left San Diego when I was 7. We moved to beautiful Sacramento.
Emphasis on the word beautiful.
Yeah. I rode bikes a lot. I was kind of a tomboy. I rode bikes with my dad down to the fish hatchery. And played soccer and listened to music. The music has always been a big part of my identity and what I love spending my time doing. Listening to music is an actual activity, something that plays in the background when I'm making dinner, but also I can sit for an hour and just listen to music, and that's a thing.
What kind of music?
It's really varied.
Yeah.
I mean, you graduate through these different phases. And so it's like, wow, I bought this Nirvana album. I'm in 6th grade. And then it's like, whoa, Green Day. And then you're like, oh, pop punk. And you're like, ooh, Fat Records. And, whatever kind of Blink 182. I wasn't a huge fan. My first concert was The Offspring. And then I never got into hardcore, but you can kind of get into hardcore from there. you can get into metal from there. There's just kind of like, if you keep progressing, there are like different levels of, and so my taste, I guess, since then has spanned everything from like minimalist composer music and like krautrock and psychedelia and like international music, and like it's pretty broad. And now there's an algorithm. I mean, it used to be you had to like know people who like knew about stuff, and it was like hard to find, and people were like ripping stuff off of records that weren't, hadn't been re-released, and you're like, oh my God, we're the only people that have this. And now it's like you can have the most obscure taste with an algorithm.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, yeah, I earned it, and now I've set my algorithm into a direction that I end up being really happy with, and it's so cool that discovery doesn't require as much work as it used to, and I don't have the time
but you wonder,
to
like, who else
dig
is
around
getting the
looking
song on
for
their algorithm?
I know, and I'll hear it like a goofy coffee shop, and I'll be like, man, do they even know what this
Killed
is?
The song already. Yeah.
And then I'm like, you're a dick, and you don't even know what it is. Like,
Sophia, you talk about, you don't know if you came out that way or if it was your parents. Are you talking about just the way you were, like a rebel? Were they rebels?
Kinda. No, not really. I mean, but my dad's kind of tough. He was kind of a challenging person to grow up with, and I wasn't coddled really.
Right.
I was an only child, so I guess I got a lot of attention, but it was more like, okay, my mom was working weekends selling houses, and my dad was like, all right, I'm going to go on a bike ride. You happen to be behind me. Keep up.
Tough love.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. But also it was like, cool. It wasn't like, yay, we're going on a bike ride. It was fun, but I was like, all right, let's go. I've always been really competitive, and not a great team player. In soccer, I would take the ball and just go straight to the goal.
Just throw it in there.
Yeah, I was
Kick
just
it,
like,
Kobe.
I'm gonna, yeah,
throw it
it's
in there.
like,
Throw it.
no, dude, you pass it. Like, there's more to it. You just have to maybe be a little bit more strategic and planful. And I think that kind of impulsivity, is something that's unfortunately persisted throughout my life, and something I really try to manage. But there's also something kind of really beautiful about just throwing paint at the wall in life and seeing what sticks. But when it dries, it's really hard to get off sometimes,
So not a rule player.
No.
What do you? Why do you think that is?
I think I was like a pretty smart kid. I think I knew I was smart. I didn't know why I was in this school where we were sitting in some place at 7:30 in the morning, and then a bell rang, and an hour later we literally moved to a different room, sat at a desk, listened to somebody, did what they said, and then another bell rang, and then you move to a different desk. Like, what are you training me for?
Yeah.
I both lazily and angstily, I guess, I don't know if that's a word, didn't like the idea of like work or capitalism. I was going to the anarchist book fair in San Francisco in high school, and ended up homeschooling my senior year of high school because I just hated it, and everybody got super phony, and all the girls were like, hey, and like hugging each other, and we're not like laughing about like farts and tampons anymore, like, and I just kind of stayed that person.
Yeah.
And I didn't
I feel you. Like in high school, it starts becoming a little bit more like cliquey, and if you don't conform and just kind of be part of the groups or whatever, and you're just kind of off on your own, then it's really hard to just make it in high school.
I essentially homeschooled, I think, his senior year too.
I was still enrolled. I just didn't go to school.
I was,
because for the same reason.
Emailed
I don't
my
think I was
teacher.
He wasn't
smart.
homeschooled, he was just home.
Yeah, I just didn't like.
I moved out when I was 17, so
Yeah.
I was like, she could like email me my homework, and I was like, I'm gonna go
would
snowboarding.
do the same.
It counts as like PE, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like your parents, I'm sure, had a very easy time raising you.
Yeah, it was a great, I was really misunderstood. My mom just kind of didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
She did her best. I would have been much better in a different kind of learning environment. I don't learn by listening. I learn by like touching, and it's a very inefficient way of learning because I go try a bunch of things, and instead of taking advice, I just go do all the things until I understand why that person gave me that advice, because other people have already done it, and there's often a lot of truth to it, but I'm always go kind of the long route to it, because when I do land on the answer, there's some level of muscle memory or something and conviction for
Yeah.
what it is that thing is that you don't necessarily get when you take things at face value. But a lot of really smart people take things at face value, and they can move a lot more quickly through the world without making as many mistakes. I just never figured out how to do that.
Yeah.
Was it fun for you to be, I mean, this is you're like 17 years old, 18 years old almost, like, was it fun for you to be rebellious, or just that's all you knew? Like that was your nature?
It was my nature, but it was also fun.
Yeah.
You know, being resourceful and just being out of my parents' house. Like that was huge. It wasn't the happiest place. You know, I think when you're an only child, you don't have a sibling to be like, haha, whatever. They're just doing their thing and go off. You know, it's very kind of lonely, and it's easy to be like, is this normal? What's normal? Are other people's families like this? And there's no one to kind of hang out with and I guess go through that with. So I was stoked to leave. But yeah, there was like a pairing of a natural angst with you know, the culture that really works for people who are angsty, which is kind of like, you know, live outside of the rules. I didn't realize that I was ambitious. I just thought I was like a free thinker, and it wasn't until I had a job, or I made a job for myself, where I could put one foot in front of the other, and I could feel my way around in the dark and do one thing better, and then it worked, and a customer was happy, and then I did it better next time. And I was like, oh, like this is really cool, and it's not about the money. I just love learning. You don't often learn in a work environment, you know, until I started Nasty Gal as an eBay store in late 2006. I was working like retail jobs for like, you know, $10 and $12 an hour in like shoe stores and lobbies.
And you were still in Sacramento at the time?
Sacramento, I worked in high school. I started at Subway, and I worked at a Borders Books, and then I worked at like the factory outlet.
Yep.
And when I moved out, eventually I wound up in San Francisco and worked at a photo lab and a record store and a shoe store, and bopped around a lot and did some community college. But the record store was fun because I was learning. Photo lab was fun because I loved photography. But most of the jobs were really kind of like, sit here, do this, wait till the day's over. And I was like, whoa, this is work. This is what people spend their lives doing. So I didn't understand work until I started this eBay thing that became so much more.
Would you say you were someone that had like pretty high self-confidence, or not really? Like, were you someone that thought, I believe in myself, I know I can be successful in life, I just, you know, I don't know what I need to do yet, but at least I believe in myself?
I did think I was special because my parents told me I was special.
Yeah.
And I thought I was smart, but I didn't want to apply it to anything conventional because that just seemed like really boring. I don't think I was confident. I think I was just trying to survive doing things that I didn't hate. And the eBay store wasn't like, the word success was not in my vernacular. It was, how can I not do these things that I hate, and let's just give it a shot. And then realized, oh shit, I'm resourceful. Oh shit, I'm ambitious and entrepreneurial, in words that, you know, I hadn't really spent much time thinking about, but it was by trying to avoid work that I wound up creating a really big job for myself.
And Sophia, at the time, I mean, you talk about 2006, like MySpace was the only social media that I remember, aside from maybe like Tumblr, because Instagram came out, or Twitter might have started around 2006. There weren't people out there that you could necessarily say, I want to be like this person, or this person has a similar mindset to me, and they just wanted to do things that also they enjoyed, and they ended up being quote unquote successful or finding happiness or whatever it was. Yeah. You had to really chart your own path, kind of blind, and it could have gone completely the other way.
Super
so
blind.
Like, what gave you, I guess, in hindsight, what gave you the foresight, if any, to just start that eBay store?
Yeah. I mean, the foresight was, okay, so I was sitting in the lobby of an art school in San Francisco, checking student IDs. That was my job, which is really funny because I stayed at the Palace Hotel for this like LPGP venture people conference, which is a block away. So I was like staying in front of this hotel. I never stepped foot in when I worked in this lobby a block away, and I could see it from there. And I was like, wow, my life has changed a lot. I'm staying at this place. Oh my God. And their Caesar salad was amazing. And the Wagyu burger was amazing. I didn't know what fucking Wagyu was. Right. I don't think anybody did in 2006.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody still knows what Wagyu is.
I still don't
just
know.
buy it and it's expensive.
And I don't know if it's Wagyu or Wagyu, but whatever.
No one knows,
Yeah, there was no artisanal coffee in San Francisco. Right. There was no like chefy, beautiful kind of restaurant. It was a really different time. And so while I was sitting in this lobby, often I had hours to spend just sitting on this computer on the internet, and there wasn't that much to do. There wasn't a Facebook. There was MySpace. There was just Googling things. Yeah. There was no, YouTube had just, I think, started. And I started getting friend requests on MySpace from people who were selling vintage clothing on eBay. And they had these store names that were kind of like brands, but they weren't really brands. But of course, everybody's eBay store has to have a name. And so it was like Mama Stone Vintage and like Indie Cult Vintage. And I clicked on their profiles and I was like, whoa, like I wear vintage. I know where to find it. I click through to their eBay pages, and these are all auctions. These people weren't setting the prices of their stuff, just people duking it out over something that collectively decided was valuable, and saw the prices of these auctions and was like, oh my God, $200 for that? Like, I know I can go get that at a thrift store.
For $8 or something.
For $8. Yeah. And so, I got my hernia fixed. I got that job to get health insurance because I had a pre-existing condition and couldn't get health insurance as an individual. That's changed since, but you had to go get a job to get group health insurance if you had a pre-existing condition. So I didn't even have health insurance before this job. So I got my little hernia fixed after I got my health insurance after waiting for 3 months, which was the period you had to wait in that job to get the health insurance. And then I just started, I was like, all right, I'm going to sell a few things. And they weren't the best and they didn't all really sell, but it was MySpace where I got the idea to do this. Yeah.
Shout out Tom Anderson
and a few others. Yeah.
Tom.
So was it, were people just like seeing it on MySpace and then jumping there, or did people just like find out about it because eBay, in 2006, was eBay that popular?
Yeah.
eBay was.
Yeah. I think it was probably even more popular.
It's probably more popular than it is now.
There was no Etsy. Right. Ecom was like, there was no Shopify.
That's right.
It was like Zappos was kind of happening. Amazon had happened. But that was a marketplace. eBay was a marketplace, but I don't remember any other marketplaces.
Yeah.
And so, marketplaces are great because you have your product there. People can discover it, whether they're searching for it or not. They might be searching for something and then they scroll the bottom of the page and there's related items. And so you're able to capitalize on other sellers promoting themselves because your products are on, this marketplace. And MySpace was an amazing thing to hack.
Yep.
So I made the photos look good and I picked great stuff and I wrote awesome descriptions and I had a funny name for my business, Nasty Gal, that really cut through the noise and wound up being a good copywriter somehow. I'm not good at any one thing more than any others.
Where'd you come up with the name?
So I worked in that record store called Streetlight Records in Noe Valley in San Francisco. Yeah. It's not there anymore. And this album was re-released called Nasty Gal by a woman named Betty Davis, who was married to Miles Davis for a short time and was allegedly too wild for him. And she's just this like amazing funk singer, had an awesome rhythm section. I loved her music and I was like, I'll call it Nasty Gal. I almost called it I Heart Vintage, believe it or not. And I think I bought that URL and thank God. What? Like, was I even the same how does the same person like think of those two names? But I was like, that'll be more commercial. I was like, whatever. I don't think I knew the word commercial, but was on MySpace, started doing what those people were doing, started adding friends. I could go to Nylon Magazine or Cool Magazines and see who they were following and just added them as friends. And then, when they became a friend and accepted my request, I would send them a message like, hey, thanks for, check out my little eBay store and, would post, I don't know what you had like your little blog thing. And every week when there was new stuff, I would,
Bulletins.
do my little,
even know.
HTML with my FTP server and like upload my stuff to my MySpace page. But I found this thing and I should have sold this idea to, whatever. It's basically like what Facebook and Google have done. It's not like I invented it. It was a bot that I found that was against MySpace's rules, but you could, because MySpace was all web-based.
Mm-hmm. The thing I loved about MySpace is that everyone felt like they were like this badass coder. Like you could like update, you could like, customize your page and with HTML and all this cool stuff. Like you can't do that anymore. Everyone's page just looks the same.
Yeah, it was like not only a reflection of your personality.
Yeah.
And
like
your
you could
music
have glitter
taste,
falling or just,
but like the 8 top people and, even how capable you were at modifying a page and making it interesting and creative. So it was also about like your capabilities in some ways. Yeah. And so I got this bot that you could type in like the name of any member and everybody's profile had their age on it, their gender, their location, who it is that they followed. And so I could actually type in such and such fashion magazine and women in New York between the ages of, 18 and 32. And it would just start adding them. I would push enter. And every like 10 or so, I had to sit at my computer and enter a CAPTCHA code. Mm-hmm. And then it would just keep adding them. And I just I ended up with, I don't know if it was 30,000 or 60,000 friends on MySpace.
Yeah.
That was a big part of how I built it, was like early hacking of social media.
Yeah, the good old internet
the way
days.
to do it.
Yeah. So how does it ultimately grow and at what point do you obviously take it off of eBay and have your own sort of platform website?
Yeah. It started growing. I just did a lot of things differently and maybe better in some ways than other sellers. I was building a brand more than I was an eBay store and realized, wow, I'm driving so many people to eBay because I would see the same names over and over again. These people were, who were buying. I was also seeing them on MySpace and engaging them on MySpace. So much was coming direct at that time. I was like, why am I doing all this work where someone can just scroll down and buy something from somewhere else? Mm-hmm. E-commerce was really hard. Launching your own website. There was,
Was it WordPress? I mean, what would you use?
Oh, I built it on something I think called Interspire. It was some like
remember
Australian.
freewebs.com? Remember
it was no.
Oh, yeah, I remember
what is it?
Freewebs.com was a free website.
It wasn't.
Maker.
Oh yeah. It was
/nastygal.
e-com. You had to have inventory. You had to have shipping weights, and you had to have be able to write a description and a title and a checkout. And this was like rubbing two sticks together at this time. So I hired a kid from high school, a friend named Cody Thomas, who was like kind of like an engineer, and he had to I designed my first PSD, and this was a time where an engineer had to literally slice up a Photoshop file and hard code an add to cart button onto the page and hard code the entire navigation onto the page. And so built this little website, bought nastygalvintage.com. And then I don't know if I had a newsletter list or how. I think somehow I pulled email addresses off of eBay and told everybody and told MySpace that I had left eBay and launched this website. And I had like 150 things on there and they all sold out right away.
And these are things you were just sourcing yourself?
Yeah, it was just me at the time, like
packaging, shipping, doing all that stuff.
Sourcing, steaming, shooting, editing the photographs, writing the descriptions, shipping everything, doing customer service, like everything. That's what it sounds so impressive. People are like, wow. And it's like, that's what every eBay seller does. Just for the record. It's not that impressive.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did it feel like you were onto something big at the moment, or was it just a means to get by and, just make money to do the things you love to do?
When that store sold out, when I launched, and when Who What Wear, which was a really big fashion newsletter, sent out a dedicated email to their entire audience about it because the two founders, Hillary Kerr and Catherine Power, were customers on eBay. And Kelly Ripa's stylist was calling me from Los Angeles. I was in Benicia, California, in this weird shipyard. I don't know if you guys know the Bay Area, but it's like almost in Vallejo. It's like almost an hour from San Francisco, but this is where I could get enough square footage that wasn't in my house to just house all this kind of, dusty clothing.
And what year is this at? Remind me.
This was 2008.
Yeah.
So the first year on eBay, I did $75K in revenue, which was like a lot, and I didn't spend the money. I didn't even know what like luxury was. And the next year was $250K, and the next year was 1.1, and that year was half eBay, half, maybe that was $250K on the website. Anyway,
regardless, pretty good margins.
75, yeah,
low
250,
overhead.
1.16 and a half, and then
Pretty
12. And that was just, I didn't have debt. I didn't have credit. I bought a Porsche eventually, but I had to pay cash like years
walked in with a
later.
briefcase.
And you're like 100% owner.
100% owner.
No partners. No
12
nothing.
million in revenue, $28 million run rate.
And this is by 2012.
That was in 2012 when Index Ventures came in.
How did you go from that 1.1 to 12 million in just 12 months?
Well, it was 1.1 to 6.5 to 12.
So you 6x and then
I
2x.
just sold more. It was no longer vintage. So
okay.
I was, the beauty of eBay is that you can list things and they sit there for 10 days.
Right.
So you don't have to ship for 10 days. When you put something on a website
Yeah.
and it sells
You got to ship it.
and it's vintage, you never use that photograph. Like it's gone. You don't have inventory immediately. And so I was like, all right, maybe I can go to a trade show and curate stuff based on everything I know about what this customer wants and what's selling. And went to Magic, this trade show in Vegas, and ordered like a few of each thing, the minimum quantities. Like sometimes it was like 3 of a dress and 6 of a dress in different sizes. And some of them were over 100, some of them were under 100, some were like a few hundred, and saw what sold. And what didn't sell were $300 dresses. And that was just how Nasty Gal found its price point. And there I was able to take one photo and write one description and sell 6 dresses. And the margin wasn't, a $200 dress on eBay that I paid $8 for, but it was pretty high.
Yeah. At that volume.
It was still very high.
And it was still just you at this point? Or did you
I had hired my first employee, and I think I had someone helping with shipping.
So still just like a couple of you doing 12 million?
No, 12 million. So
yeah, at that point.
It was when it started picking up from 250 to 1.1 to 6.5 was when I started selling things that weren't vintage.
Got it.
In addition to that. And then 12 was just demand. It was word of mouth. It was almost all direct traffic. And business to me was buy more things for less than you sell them for. Don't spend all the money.
Very different than
that
business
was it.
now.
That's all I understood.
And
now I'm
buy
a venture.
Hire and sell it
now
less.
I'm a venture investor.
Yeah. So
totally backwards.
I want to take it back just a little bit to like the audience creation aspect of the business, because I think of brands now and fashion being one of the harder brands or being one of the harder industries to really collect and build an audience in, but everything else too, any CPG products, I mean, food, anything really, it's really audience driven today. Even if I'm an incredible founder with an incredible product, it doesn't really matter unless I have people to sell it to. Was eBay that quote unquote hack for you to build that audience early on?
The MySpace hack?
The MySpace hack to
eBay
MySpace
and
hack.
MySpace.
Yeah.
I mean, I got kicked off of eBay right when the website launched because I was leaving reviews for customers, because they used to have like 2-way reviews, and they'd be like, love my thing, love my dress, oh my God. And then I'd be like,
check
hey,
out our website.
nastygalvintage.com is coming.
Just redirect.
And I just
people.
like copy
Yeah.
paste like before, and there was like maybe a newsletter sign up. I don't know, something there.
Yeah, little did you know that they had their own bots.
And so I was like building, an audience for the website before it even launched. But it was all word of mouth. There was it was Zappos. There was nothing. There was no fact. It was like Nordstrom.
Is there like ASOS?
I don't think-
ASOS was like 2012,
Yeah.
20 maybe
Yeah.
2011. Index, who invested in Nasty Gal, had
Yeah.
invested in ASOS, as seen on screen.
Yeah.
I didn't
And
know that.
so, I mean, it was Shopify didn't exist in 2012, didn't exist in 2013. Like I had a huge engineering team just to make a e-com website. It was so much more expensive and so different at that time. And there was so little. It wasn't that, it honestly was not that competitive.
You know, when it comes to legal help, I'm tired of hidden fees and complex billing structures. Isn't there a better way?
Well, that's exactly what Decrypted Law offers. They're pioneers in transparent, flat fee pricing for startups. And guess what? They even have a subscription service for fractionalized general counsel.
Subscription service for a law firm?
That's right. Decrypted Law is revolutionizing the way legal services are consumed. For a flat monthly fee, startups can now have access to top-tier, on-demand legal counsel.
Wow, that's a game changer. No more bill shock, just clear, predictable costs. Decrypted Law, they're not just breaking down legal complexities, they're making legal services more accessible. Learn more and contact them at decryptedlaw.com. Mention the founder of our podcast so they know who sent you.
Love soda? Listen up. Introducing Olipop, a new kind of soda that's actually good for you. It's the fastest growing beverage brand in America, and here's why you'll love it too. Gut health matters, and Olipop has your back. 2 out of 3 Americans suffer from digestive issues, and Olipop tackles that with a soda that tastes amazing. With 9 grams of prebiotics in every can, it's the gut-friendly choice you've been waiting for. Now let's talk flavors. Vintage cola, classic root beer, my favorite, orange squeeze, classic grape, and more. It takes me back to those childhood days. And guess what? Olipop has way less sugar than traditional sodas. Vintage cola only has 2 grams of sugar compared to the 39 grams of sugar in a regular Coca-Cola. Pretty impressive, huh? But it doesn't stop there. Olipop's drinks are non-GMO, vegan, paleo, and keto-friendly, with less than 8 grams of net carbs per can. They've got something for everyone. Ready to give Olipop a try? The Founder Hour listeners can get 20% off their next order with the code FOUNDER20, FOUNDER 20. Head to their website, www.drinkolipop.com, or find Olipop in over 22,000 stores nationwide.
Sophia, were you at all like mindset wise, like were you like aware of what you had done? Like just coming from that 17-year-old, girl that left her house, that was this rebel that just wanted to like do things that you liked. Was it like, what the hell just happened type thing? Or was it more of a progression and we're just kind of skipping some?
It was a real shock to the system.
Yeah.
I recommend that nobody with the level or lack thereof of education or experience that I had build a business at the speed that I did, at the age that I did.
Yeah.
Some people figure it out, but and because the company was profitable from day one, and I didn't spend any of the money. There was so much money just sitting in the company's Wells Fargo account. I never really learned how to read a P&L early on. Like there weren't a lot of hiccups. It was like, oh, okay, like, something happened with shipping and things are late. We'll deal with that. But the real mechanics of operating a business, I didn't really learn other than like buy stuff, sell it, ship stuff. It was pretty 101.
Mm-hmm.
And then it exploded. And I really was at a disadvantage not having ever worked in an office that my name wasn't on the lease of, ever seeing an example of what even leadership was. I didn't know people needed to be told what to do. I thought that would be like insulting, like you're not babies.
Mm-hmm.
But I really just didn't know because I never I just didn't have any empathy built for what teams needed to be successful. I didn't know what a fucking career was.
Yeah.
Nobody even told me. I should be selling shoes.
Yeah. So, but had you known, you feel like things would have been a little different?
I think so. I don't know if I would have started a business.
Right. You could have talked yourself out of doing it because you might have looked down the line and be like, this doesn't make sense.
My brain, I'm a creative, and that's, a big part of why I got really far. But I wouldn't have sat down and learned all that stuff because I didn't want to be a business person. I thought business people were like carried briefcases and stuff. you know.
I mean, this is like 2006 to 2012 when you get the funding from Index Ventures. So 6 years you've already been building this business.
Yeah. It was late 2000, like November 2006. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 was when the money came in. Yeah.
Mm. And what made you decide this is time to like go out there and now raise funding?
I didn't go out there. It was all inbound. People were like, who's this freak? How do we, some associate calls. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Bloop. I've got a COO at that time and some, an HR person and maybe like 20, 25 people. Or no, maybe like 20 or 25. I'd moved the company to LA at that time. In like 2011.
And you're still in your 20s at this stage.
Yeah, I was born in 84. So, 2012, I was like 20, 6, 7?
8.
Something.
8, 7, 8, yeah.
Yeah, don't tell him. Not good at math. And it was like Index, an associate reached out, and then I don't know if someone introduced me to Jeff Jordan. I don't know if someone introduced me to Jeremy Liu, but I didn't like go pitch people. They were just like, cool, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was in 2012 when, Jeff Jordan flew to LA and Jeremy Liu flew to LA and Danny Reimer flew to LA. And I met these guys like, over a decade ago. Fab.com was the thing in 2012. And it was like One Kings Lane, Beachmint, Diego Berdakin was a friend. Like, all that stuff was happening.
Is that the Uber guy?
He started Cloud Kitchens with Travis Kalanick.
That's right.
Yeah. He was a professor at USC when I was a student there. So
I spoke to his class.
Really? Okay. I didn't take his class. I wish I did, but
he's very cool. I haven't seen him in so long.
It was him and Michael Brew Kim, I think.
Yeah, he's a friend. It was the first time I had seen a business person sit on a sofa with no shoes on, cross-legged, and I was like, it was all startup-y, He actually had the stretched out.
This was Diego?
Yeah. I had never been to a startup office before, never seen like this casualness that like a startup founder had sitting who sits cross-legged on a sofa in a meeting? I didn't.
Sophia does.
I do. I am right now. And ultimately I was like, okay, so, I owned 100% of the business. Index was like, cool, it's worth $350 million. And I was like, cool, so you're going to invest 50 and I'll own 80% of my company. I'll take some money off the table. Cool. And I bought this house in 2012. And that was a really life-changing moment. But it also like,
give us that moment though. Like, I mean, somebody tells you that your company's worth whatever, $350 million. Like, and did you know that going into that meeting?
No.
Yeah.
No. I was, I had a consultant friend, Dana Freed, who was from the apparel world. And he was like, don't raise money. You don't need to. And if you do, the longer you wait, the less you'll have to sell. And I was like, cool. And I understood that. I didn't know that a 10x valuation was insane. Because I didn't really set it. I didn't have multiple term sheets. I wasn't like, well, Index has one. So, hey, Lightspeed, what do you think? Danny was like, I get it. You have a community. And that word wasn't really a thing, but I was like, yeah, I do. That's what Nasty Gal is. It like it changes the way people feel about themselves when they wear these clothes. It was so much more than clothing. And he got that. And I was like, and I liked Index and he had great taste. And I'd never made a deck in my life before. So they made a deck. And they put
being Index,
one of the associates. Yes. They put all the info about the company in there and they just said, can you explain this to the partnership? And they invested $50 million, which is like really naive on my part, pretty irresponsible on their part. But hey, it was an awesome ride.
Yeah.
The best.
And the idea was that you would remain the CEO and run it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
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 So and then I guess what ended up happening ultimately.
Yeah. So I built it from, when they invested, we were on an upswing from 12 to 28 in revenue profitably. And then of course it's like venture and it's like grow at all costs. And so me and my new board, put our fingers in the air and said, well, what do we want to do next year? And we were like rounded up by 100 million. We were like 128. And so we like hired 100 people in a year and hired like a CFO everything O.
Yeah.
And
CAO, CBO,
I,
CCO,
I don't know how to integrate. I don't know what process is. Everyone was like redundant and bumping into each other.
It was back
and
to like the bells ringing.
it was, yeah, it was, but it was just like, I don't know how to hire 100 people and have them understand like what to do, because I have no idea what they're doing. And I thought, I hired executives who had careers longer than I had been alive. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, I have to hold you accountable. I learned that the hard way. And I just thought like these grown-ups would show up and diagnose what happened and work together and go do the thing when they said they were going to do it, because I thought that's what people did. But
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist, but I heard that in quantum physics, things that are observed behave differently than things that are, and people are the same. That was a tough lesson. So it took longer than a year to get to over 100 million in revenue, but it happened.
What did you guys do to get there? Like,
Blew through a ton of money, hired a ton of people,
Just like
did
marketing.
paid marketing. Yeah, it was like,
this
it
is
was
just revenue at
exploding
this
on
point.
its own. That was revenue.
Got it.
Yeah. So got to over 100 million in revenue around the time I wrote this book called Girlboss.
Mhm.
in
#Girlboss.
#Girlboss. I mean, in 2014, I put like a hashtag at the beginning of a book, and it like, I think it worked, because there's like 25
now.
million #Girlbosses on Instagram now.
Yep.
I don't want them all to be attributed to me, because it's been like 10 years since I wrote it, 9 years since it was published, but that became a whole thing. That was distracting, but it spent 18 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and sold 500,000 copies. And it went on this big like road show and became even more the poster child of entrepreneurship. That was pretty crazy. And then sales just kind of like leveled out. We weren't growing as much. We were super unprofitable. I don't know. I don't know exactly what those numbers were. I had a CFO.
What was the
Urban
vision,
Outfitters
though?
forever.
Like between you and your investors and the board and everybody, like what was the vision of where you wanted to take it? I mean, was it something that you talked about, like exit strategy? Like, do we want to sell this company? Do we want it to go public?
Yeah. I think my investors thought it would go public.
Okay.
The expectation when you raise it a $350 million valuation is that the next time you raise money, it's the company is somehow worth $1 billion.
Yep.
But we
Stock
weren't.
ticker NSTY.
Yes.
Nasty.
But we weren't even doing the 28 million in revenue that we were on. That was a 12-month forward facing run rate.
Yeah.
Like when they said it was worth 350. So it was just that I don't think I really understood what I was signing up for. I keep my promises. I always plan on keeping my promises, but what that promise was, I don't think I was able to grasp at 26 years old with I still can't build a pivot table.
Sophia, maybe you could give us a lesson in valuation here, because I don't understand. I still don't understand how the venture valuations work really. But if a business is doing 28 million in revenue, which genius says that it's worth 350 million? I don't really understand that concept. Maybe I'm not smart enough, but I would like to know, because I want to start a business that makes 10,000 and then just sell for 120,000. Those are pretty, I could just keep doing that.
Yeah, that's a much better.
Yeah.
Build a profitable business.
And just sell it.
Sell it for
10x,
10x, 4x.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You build a company that's doing 15 million in revenue and you sell it for 30 and you own 100% of it. You're in pretty good shape if you put cash in the bank. That's a really successful exit. I think everybody thinks they need to build $100 million business, but guess what? You don't want to deal with what comes with that.
Right.
And you don't, raising hundreds of millions of dollars. What?
Minus the money.
Yeah, money's great, but the chance of an exit when you've got this $350 million price tag on your head is way lower, I think, than a company that has really healthy metrics.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, how do they explain themselves?
So part of it is all right, what's happening in the market based on comps with public companies. So in retail, there was more traditional retail where private equity guys might have valued a more traditional non-e-com retail business, physical retail business at 2x or 2.5x. And that's the valuation they would place on one of those companies. which kind of makes sense. I mean, fashion is not technology. You know, technology is different, and the valuations that come with, I think, technology companies
Is
that
it
have
tied to like the scalability of it?
it's tied to the scalability of it. It's also tied to what's going on in like the venture market. Yeah. If the market's doing great in general, people are really optimistic. So, you know, in the last few years, and this changed at like the end of last year, companies with like not even $1 million in like ARR were getting $100 million valuations, $50 million valuations. It's crazy. And they're so fucked. And I'm, you know, and I invested in some of them, even one that had a $25 million valuation. They've like recapitalized,
Down rounds.
Yeah, now they're worth like
Nothing.
nothing.
Well, they were never worth anything, but somebody told them they were.
I mean, the value of something is the price that someone's willing to pay. That's like, that is the value of something, and that value can change over time.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and so there's a certain amount of like pixie dust. It can be based on the founder's track record.
Right.
Like WeWork guy, you know, if he was some rando, not going to happen, you know? So there's a lot of different factors, who's involved, you know, who's already backing them, what their experience is, what the opportunity in the market is, obviously what their idea is, their ability to hire and, you know, scale a business, how great of a product person they might be, what's their domain expertise, and then also all the weird, and then there's this like the sheep kind of mentality of venture folks where sometimes one person will say it's worth this much, and then everyone's like, okay, we agree.
You're a smart guy. You must be right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So what ultimately happened where you decided to leave?
Oh yeah.
Nasty Gal?
Yeah. I know what you're trying to get to.
We want to move on to the.
I just wanted to make sure that I said that I built it to over 100 million in revenue before we get to this.
100%.
So, after 10 years of building this business, my
2016
entire fucking youth.
Yep.
Yeah. Now it's 2016. We've had people approach us to buy the company for over 400 million, but that's not enough of a markup. I own 80% of the company when an outfitter that sells urban apparel offered over $400 million for the company. And I had control, but I took advice, and the advice was like, ask for more, turn it down, and it went away. Whatever, everything goes away anyway. No deal happens. And so I watched that happen. Where it was like, okay, we could do a down round, or okay, maybe e-com at 10x multiples aren't a thing right now, fashion. So VCs don't want to invest at that kind of a multiple, which is not going to make my investors happy if they're, you know, if I'm raising at a flat round or a down round. And I think Nasty Gal became the kind of company where a private equity investor would have been the ideal.
Right.
And I spent time with those guys who had, been involved with like Theory and Rag and Bone and great brands and big companies, but weren't necessarily in this world of like ASOS and fast fashion. And they, I'd get them on board, and they started kind of disappearing, and I just didn't really know what happened. And I think ultimately, and what I heard later on when I asked, like, hey, where'd you go? Like, seemed like that was going to happen. They were like, I talked to your investor, your CFO, or someone who were like, if you can't pay more than 350 million, like, don't show up. And so there was like this like silent cock blocking that happened for a little while. And then it became, okay, let's raise a down round. Fine. Like, cash really sucks, after that. And we did. And Index, basically, I put my own money back into the company and never saw it again. At that point, I had hired a CEO for the last like year and a half because I hated that job.
Yeah. You had moved to like
and then it became Hail Mary, it was like, it wasn't like, oh, let's raise a down round and find a great private equity buyer who can take us to $1 billion because they've got distribution and shops and they're strategic and they understand apparel, unlike our, venture investors. So it became that, and then it became like Hail Marys. and the Hail Marys never, we hailed, but like
Yeah.
the cab
But Mary
never,
never
the
came.
cab never stopped.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Nasty Gal filed for Chapter 11 at the end of 2016 on the day Trump was elected.
Oh,
It's
good
like
day.
bonkers. 6 months after I was on the cover of Forbes,
Isn't
and
that kind of a
like,
nice state though to go bankrupt? Because everyone's talking
yeah,
about
the
that.
news cycle.
Kind of
Is it-
just yeah.
I would
kind of-
like to
'cause it
say it
goes, like,
got
disappears?
swept under the news
Yeah.
cycle, but like
not really.
it was still a pretty loud
was
flop.
still
Yeah.
pretty
It was like Wall Street Journal. It was like I was really out there, and so they had been making this Netflix series
Mhm.
based on my book called Girlboss that Charlize Theron produced,
Mhm.
and they were shooting it while things were going great with Nasty Gal. Not as great behind the scenes, but still kind of it could have pulled it off. And it was 4 months later, after we filed for Chapter 11, that this Netflix series came out with a character named Sophia, starting an eBay store called Nasty Gal, streamed into 130 million homes in 195 countries in pretty much every language, broadcasting the person I was when I was 22, when for the first time in my entire life, I'm not involved with that thing.
Mm.
So now there's like a big PR campaign about who I was. And a lot of people hadn't heard of Nasty Gal. So there's those people who were like, oh, cool, great story. And then there was the press who was like, okay, so there's the girl boss, Sophia, who did layoffs and she's a villain. And then there's the CEO, Sophia. There's the, and now there's this scripted comedy with a made up character
Mhm.
who's kind of abrasive, pretending to be me. And there was just this huge conflation of like, who is this person?
Yeah, and you weren't involved at all with that. Like
I
it was just based on
I
the
was
book.
a producer
Yeah.
on the show
Yeah.
by way of it being an adaptation of my book, but I didn't have script approval.
Got it.
I didn't want to like micromanage
Which is
and be
interesting
like,
because it's like
I
based
wouldn't
on
have
you.
said no, but being like, I'm too vain to be the person that would say, I wouldn't have said it like that. Like I'm actually too vain to be
Yeah.
that person. So, and creatives hate it. Like, so I was like, great, these people are talented. We'll make a great show. So that was harder than I think the Nasty Gal face plant,
Yeah.
because there's people whose jobs in entertainment that are called like literally critics.
Mhm.
So I had been criticized, but now there's people criticizing this character.
Right.
And there's headlines like, the worst thing about Netflix's Girl Boss is its source material.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And you get it on your podcast somehow.
Mhm.
Here it is.
That's crazy.
The worst.
Yeah.
I have a question. Because I know a lot of the women in my life. I just thought of this. But a lot of the women in my life, they get upset when I say girl and not lady when they're above 18. Why did you call it Girl Boss and not Lady Boss?
Oh, Lady Boss sounds awful.
It does, right?
For
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
If
Doesn't
someone calls
flow.
me a lady, their English is usually not their first language.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like, okay, lady. I'm like,
Lady, can you please?
lady.
lady,
Lady's never good.
Isn't it derogatory?
No, it's not derogatory.
It depends on how you say
And
it.
girl is like, diminutive. It's like, oh, you're, hey, kiddo, kind of.
Hey, bud.
But yeah, bud's better.
No, bud and champ are
I
two
prefer-
of the worst words in the world.
I just like, call me a bimbo. I don't care. I don't care. But at the time, people weren't like, I'm a boss. I'm not a girl boss. And that book, literal kind of, okay, Girl Boss was the name of the book, but similar to Nasty Gal, like then it wasn't about the name. Google's not about
Yeah.
the name. It was about what it did.
Yeah.
And that book inspired so many people. And it was a year after Lean In, and there was no book written by a goofy community college dropout woman. It was like Susie Orman and Sheryl Sandberg, these like ladies who had written a book that showed a generation of people, and mostly women, that all you need is an internet connection and a free trial to something. And now Shopify and all these amazing tools by the time, even some of them by 2014 when the book came out. But like, holy shit, like they could see themselves the girl from Sacramento could see herself as a business person and a cool one. Oh my God, cool people do this.
Yeah.
And they have fun doing it. And the clothes are cool. And like, what, so I think it just became this like, Girl Boss became this calling card for people who weren't arguing over girl or lady. They were just like, fuck yeah, like this is crazy. I can do this.
Yep.
Was that your intention? Like, did you set out to inspire people, or did you just set out to tell your story, and then in doing so, people were inspired? I mean, like, because nowadays you'll have just people that have like a masterclass for everything they do. It's like, I earned 8 figures selling on Amazon. It's like, okay, you didn't, but it's okay. But like, what was your intention?
I wanted to inspire people. I wanted to share a story that was really unlikely. I mean, I was like hitchhiking in big rigs when I was 18. These stories are all pretty entertaining. And I do start the book with talking about smearing poop on the wall. So it's like part memoir, but it's also part business advice. And it's, there's illustrations that were square, so you could point your phone at them and like post it on Instagram in square format, which was like the only format.
Pretty interactive.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to make these cool, it's a hashtag. I'm going to make it shareable. I'm going to make people feel really good about reading this book because the chapters are short, and engineered a great feeling just because someone got through a chapter. Like,
big feeling.
It's so hard to get through chapters. I mean, for a lot of people listening, that may not be the case, but it is such a great feeling.
That's why we did this podcast, because we stopped reading books and we're like, we got to just tell these people's stories on a podcast, which is it's probably better.
Yeah. You get to sit down and learn from people. Like, yeah.
And you can do it while doing other things. It's the nice thing. Like reading a book, you just have to kind of sit down.
Yeah.
And not do anything else and just like read.
And also depends on how you learn. Like I learn in conversation. Yeah. I learn through hearing people's stories. Yeah. I do read, but I also I'm pretty ADD, and again, I'm very kind of experiential learner. So
So you decide, to ride that wave and create like this whole media company out of
so then I was like, oh shit, all I've got to write on is this girl boss thing.
Yeah.
I'm unemployable. Yep. I'm not involved with Nasty Gal. I'm not going to go raise money. But I was like, I'm damaged goods, but whatever. I'm just going to do this girl boss thing. And so at the same time, the Netflix series came out, which was a really challenging time. So 4 months after Nasty Gal Face Plants, I'm like, I'm going to do a conference because there's so many people that were still inspired. Girl Boss became noisier than this $100 million company. And so I was like, I'm going to do this thing called the Girl Boss Rally. And, as I do, I just like throw things up on the internet. And I was like, here, cool, tickets for sale, 500 tickets. And I just announce things and then I figure out how to do them. That's kind of like what I do now, unfortunately. I'm a venture investor. And so sold like 500 tickets to the first Girl Boss Rally in LA, got Shopify and really awesome brands to sponsor it, because I had done some little influencery things, before, and had some relationships. Got, Sally Krawcheck and Kevin Systrom and like amazing people on stage, Emily Weiss and Ty Haney, and some like big names to speak at that conference. Just awesome women that I had known for so long and had the privilege of getting to know through the podcast that I started in 2015, through getting invited to dinner things and going to Cannes Lions or whatever those things might be, who showed up for me. A lot of people are afraid of failure, and maybe this is the case for some of them. Maybe if you do some weird perverted shit, I don't know, but everybody showed up for me. Like I had been, slaughtered not that long prior, but all these people showed up. I was like, oh my God, my publicist, I haven't had a publicist in years, but like my agent, I had an agent at WME. They don't do anything for me anymore. But at the time I was like, fuck, everybody's just going to drop me. Like this is, and that's not what happened. It was really cool and encouraging, and still really hard and scary to stand in front of people at that time. And so it became this small, I mean, it was a media company. It did a few million first year in revenue. We did like 4 or 5 the second year. It's first year in business. Did I say first year in revenue? Anyway, it's first year, and I did like $1.5 million or $2 million the first year. Yeah.
Actually, they should replace it. First year in revenue.
Should be.
I like
should
that.
be.
Business necessarily
Yeah, it
might not mean
doesn't-
revenue.
It doesn't count until you
It's a new
make money.
phrase. First year in revenue.
Yes.
Coined on the Founder
Right.
Hour by Sophia.
Word business doesn't exist anymore.
No, it's not business.
And so raised a little money from Initialized, which is Alexis Sohanian, and Lightspeed.
Gary Tan.
Gary Tan. And then at Lightspeed, it was Nicole Quinn, and I had known Jeremy for a long time.
Didn't they have like an Apple show at some point?
They did.
They had like an Apple TV show where it was like the
Planet
voice.
of the Apps.
God,
Yes.
it was so cringe.
Gwyneth Paltrow was on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Gary V.
Gary Vee was one of my investors at Girlboss. Yeah, had some awesome folks, and ultimately, we've watched all the media companies face plant. Media was not quite on its way out. It was digital media, but it wasn't a media company where we had scale, where we could sell banner ads, where we, so it was all very integrated. Like, you get an episode on the podcast and presence at the Girlboss rally, and we've got this newsletter, and it was all very high touch. Yeah. That was like a custom proposal for each one of these, like, media brands that, these brands that we were working with. So it was very like human capital intensive. I sold it at the end of 2019, right before COVID, and left in the middle of COVID. We couldn't do events and brands were not spending money. And decided to start something called Business Class, which was like, all right, this is going to be a lifestyle business. It's like, it's an online course. It's awesome. So that's what I started doing in 2020 and still do. It's an online course for entrepreneurs. I launched 2 cohorts a year, and it's super duper comprehensive. And when I say Business Class, it sounds boring.
Yeah, but what did I'm curious, what did
yeah.
you see that was missing? Obviously, there's so many places that you can go to learn, right? I mean, you can go to school, you can go to get your MBA, you can go to YouTube, what was the missing piece that you thought, I'm going to solve this?
Yeah, I think the missing piece is someone who's been there, curating all the things that they wish they knew and all the things that they've learned from people who knew it and told them about it, maybe after they already made those mistakes, and who's worked with all the people with the MBAs, but also been the bootstrap founder feeling my way around in the dark. You can, the output's only as good as the input with YouTube. So you have to know what you're looking for, and you have to know what you don't know often to find what it is that you need to learn that could work on YouTube. But it, that's a long path. So in the same way that, Girlboss inspired people who are kind of accidental entrepreneurs, bootstrapped entrepreneurs, Business Class really serves mostly bootstrap founders, really, really early stage founders, more like business owners almost.
Yeah.
Most of the students in Business Class aren't like venture backed or backable companies. And there's nothing cool. I mean, I just love brands. And so I know I've said Business Class is a podcast. You can't see anything, but if you go to businessclass.co, it's like the website itself is a masterclass in branding. Like that alone should get you, should make someone want to take it. And I don't like toot my own horn with many things, like everything, because obviously I really haven't done everything right. But it's aviation themed. So when I say Business Class, you have to imagine me. I usually have brown hair, but I'm wearing a Pan Am, 1960s Pan Am flight attendant outfit. I've got like the bump, the hair, I've got the makeup, and everything is aviation themed. So every one of the modules is called a flight. Every one of the lessons inside of that is called a leg. We run for 10 weeks, but we have 3 break weeks, which are called layovers. Like it is like endless copywriting, like fun.
Yeah.
Our online community is called The Lounge. So it is so fun and colorful and beautiful, and it makes learning fun. And I crack jokes. And
how much of your time is this taking up right now at Business Class?
I launch 2 cohorts a year in the spring and in the fall.
And you're teaching it.
I'm teaching it. It's on demand, so it's people can take it on their own time. Right. Even though we launch these cohorts and people have like 10 days to register twice a year, they're kind of guided through the content, and that one flight is dropped per week. We don't want to overwhelm people, so after they enroll, that Monday we do a kickoff call and flight 1. They have flight 1 to take, and then the following Monday they have flight 2, and then maybe there's a layover. So it's not taught live. It's really highly produced. And I do a weekly Zoom call with a different expert, like Sam Parr, the founder of like Away or ClassPass, or really, BuzzFeed, awesome people, where I'm just in conversation with them talking about entrepreneurship or what their specialty might be, like marketing. And so I do those live with students, and everything else is pretty asynchronous. And my job is really to promote it. So in the spring, for a month, I go super hard on Instagram. It's probably really annoying. Run a ton of ads to, a free class workshop webinar thing, which is like a very formulaic way of launching online courses, but I try to do it in the coolest way.
Yeah.
Drive people through the funnel, get leads, convert them.
All the
And,
fun stuff.
it's just like not rocket science.
Sophia, I'm curious, like, for, obviously you've accomplished a lot as an entrepreneur, as a business person, and still are. And, I'm really more so curious about like you as a person, like how you, number one, have dealt with all of this throughout your kind of young career. And, I know you mentioned like having ADD and just clearly are a very driven, motivated person, always have been. That also comes with challenges. I know myself, I know Pat knows herself, like a lot of like driven people have those challenges with anxiety perhaps, or depression, or, just being antisocial, right? Whatever it may be. Does that resonate at all with you? Or
Yeah. If I'm not busy, I get kind of bummed.
Yeah.
And I don't have hobbies. Like I kind of tried surfing, like doing things that don't benefit me in any way is really like hard.
Yeah.
I just like learning, and I don't have, like, learning curve for anything I do literally is like so steep that like I don't have time to do like I like left TED early. Like I somehow got invited to TED, but I was like, this is super extra. This is like a ballerina talking about her experience. Like I need to go work.
Yeah.
So like I don't have time to be inspired.
Yeah.
Which sounds pretty hardcore, but
No, it makes sense.
No.
I know you also invest. You have a fund called Trust Fund. We were talking about it before the podcast. It's a brilliant name. I love it. What's the whole story there? Why did you decide?
So I talked a little bit about having felt my way around in the dark in 2007 with none of these, no Venmo, no Stripe, no like Etsy, no cloud, right? And so I felt every single pain point that entrepreneurs have when they're building businesses, both at the bootstrap, super early stage, also at the venture stage and growth stage, whether it's managing people or logistics and shipping stuff or marketing or insurance. There's so many different things that you have to learn. There was no Gusto or JustWorks. And so now, looking at all of these tools that have emerged since I, started my journey as an entrepreneur, very enviously watching people have these awesome tools to build businesses with. Like, I know what it is that they need just so on such a deep level that's what I'm investing in. So I started a fund. I've been angel investing for mostly the last 4 years, pretty successfully in companies like Liquid Death and Public.com and 8 Sleep. Superhuman, really just stuff I love using. Kindbody, which is like a fertility startup. I've done pretty well with that and just was like, okay, enough of my capital is locked up for 10 years, but I love doing this and I have great deal flow and I love working with entrepreneurs. And so I do that with mostly bootstrap founders and business class, but then also with companies that do have venture scalable businesses who can become unicorns, who could become public companies, who are, built by people who have built public companies, who have great venture folks around them, who are helping them, and the valuations are not as crazy as they were in, 2021.
Yep.
So that's also it's a hard time to be fundraising, both as someone who's doing what I'm doing because I have to ask people for money, and as a founder. So people who are fundraising right now, they really mean it.
Mhm.
They're not doing it to get some like
But
fairy,
also probably,
fairy
like-
dust valuation.
But also probably the best time to invest, because ideally, I mean, nobody knows for a fact, but ideally, it's at a time where it is tough, and you see the stock market, you see real estate valuations, you see companies just that shouldn't have ever been valued as much as they were, but eventually things will get back to a positive place. I don't
Yeah.
want to say as good as they were, because I don't think a company that's doing 10 million in revenue should be worth 800 million, but it's going to get a lot better.
It will.
Yeah.
And the mandate from venture,
Right.
like this word didn't exist in venture,
Mhm.
is to be profitable.
Mhm.
These companies, they're being pushed to find their way to profitability at a very early.
And when you say these companies, are you talking about the venture funds
Venture-
or the
The
companies they're investing
venture,
in?
the venture
I
companies.
think
Yeah.
there was a big bubble, right? And like, I think people became a lot smarter all across the board, whether it's, I mean, we could sit and talk all about like what happened in like 2020 with the SPAC boom and all this kind of stuff. Like people realized like, if you're not a business that makes money, I mean, I don't know where this is going. Like there's really no place to go.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's like business 101.
Yeah. Back to basics.
Yeah. I mean, there are some companies, all right, you're building stuff for space. You're, developing a cure for cancer. You're, there's stuff that's really capital intensive when you start out.
ESG, like environmental stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. There's stuff that you really need money for up front before the thing makes money. And some of those are such amazing ideas that they'll sell before they make money. Such just like amazing products.
Mhm.
But, a lot of people can, find an engineer, become an engineer, or,
Mhm.
Buy clothes and flip them. Or there's, a lot of companies don't need that level of investment to get started and find their way to profitability.
In your now like almost 4 decades of life, and like going back to your 17-year-old self, as someone who said, I don't want necessarily a career and to like fit into a certain bucket or whatever it may be, but I just want to do things I like. I enjoy that, things I don't actually hate. Looking back the last now, 20 years that you've been building companies and communities and et cetera, like, are you content? Are you happy with where you are?
I mean, yeah, I always want to do more. I'm terrified of the jobs I keep giving myself, and who am I to teach entrepreneurs? Who am I to be investing people's money? Like, I'll always feel like an imposter, but that's the thing that drives me and makes me curious and gives me a different perspective, I think, than everyone else who's doing the jobs that I'm doing. I mean, I can wake up any day and look around at my life and think, holy shit, I never thought I would like have a life like this. My parents are healthy. I have 3 poodles. I've got a hot boyfriend who's an incredible cook. There's nothing I could complain about.
Right.
And when I do, I'm like, okay, dummy, like look around you.
It's a delicate balance for sure of
It is.
having this like ambition and wanting to do more, but also just being content and happy with like what you have.
Yeah. I mean, what I have, I still have to pay. I still have to work
Right.
to maintain, and it's fucking expensive. So there's that.
Yeah.
So am I motivated, or am I, just trying to stay in this house? That's an extreme way of saying it, but I work for a reason, not for fun.
For sure. Well, this has been nothing short of a pleasure to have you on
Yeah.
the show. Just hearing your story, it's insane. I think like from where you started and sort of the journey that you've had is incredible. And, I think I speak for both of us when I say we can't wait to see what happens next. I'm sure there's a lot coming.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.